Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another edition of In the Clouds. I am Chris Short, executive producer of this thing called OpenShift TV. I'm joined by two wonderful Red Hatters today. We're going to be talking about the Red Hat Marketplace. Katie Gilio is here and Lars Herman is here. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us what you do here at Red Hat.
Sure. Thank you, Chris, and happy to be here. Hello to everybody. So I'm Katie Gilio. I am the product marketing lead for our Red Hat partner ecosystem, which means I work on the positioning of our certification offerings with our ISV and SI partners. And then I also lead the positioning for Red Hat Marketplace. And I get the chance to work with a lot of our IBM and Red Hat sellers in ways that we can better ensure that our OpenShift users unlock that value of OpenShift. So I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. I would like to note that Katie is even doing this while she's on PTO. So thank you very much, Katie, for coming on the air.
You're welcome.
Lars, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Chris. And thanks everybody for tuning in here. I'm glad to be here. My name is Lars Herman. I'm responsible for the partner ecosystem at Red Hat out of our products and technology organization. It's all about creating customer choice of lots and lots of solutions and technologies to use and driving success, not just for Red Hat, but for all our partners in driving value to our customers and hopefully grow the business on the way.
Awesome. So we have a kind of icebreaker question we ask on the show here, and we were discussing it before we went live. And Lars, this is going to be difficult for you, but it's easier for Katie and I. Is cheesecake a cake or a pie? And we ask that because it's not a clear definition there, although maybe there is.
So if you're asking me that question, Chris, I don't have a horse in this race. Because very simply put, you might see the little flag in the background. I'm from Germany, and I don't think that the word pie in the English language is well enough defined to really be able to answer that question. It goes against the German desire for precision in the language, so I don't really know the answer to that.
Fair enough. Katie, you have a dog in this fight, I feel like, right?
I do, and I did have an opinion when I first thought about it. So I do think with a cheesecake, when you have a cheesecake, it's at the end of it, you really feel like you had a slice of a meal. And right. I differentiate that between a cake. A cake has that delicious end of meal, closing out the meal feel, but a cheesecake, you could almost just use that for your dinner. And then you can substitute it with some, a pie can be a meat pie. It can be a variety of different styles of pie. So I'm going to classify this as a pie versus a cake.
Very well. Cheesecake is my favorite dessert, so I don't care what you call it. I just eat it. But Lars,
and I have to say, unfortunately, I have the lactose intolerance, so I had to give up cheesecake a long time ago. I know. I did have it when I was younger, and it was delicious, but yeah, I just look at it from afar now.
Yeah, I'm not big on sweets for some reason, and yeah, maybe that's why. I don't know. So thank you for entertaining me for a second. I appreciate that. So what is Red Hat Marketplace? What is it designed to do? How does it help people?
Sure. Great question. And really thrilled to talk to everyone about it today. So really simply put, Red Hat Marketplace offers OpenShift users that ability to discover, to trial, to purchase, and then even manage certified container-based solutions from our ISVs, and also from Red Hat and from IBM. We have about 75 and gaining by the day commercial offerings in Marketplace that are across 12 different categories. So for AI, ML, databases, DevOps, security, developer tools, big data, storage, anything you really need in order to move workloads onto OpenShift. And that's the purpose that the products within Marketplace serve. We work with such ISVs as Anchor, Cockroach Labs, Couchbase, Dynatrace, MongoDB. So there's quite a variety that we offer, and these are commercial, right? So they're not community. These are commercial offerings.
Right.
but the thing to think about when you look at marketplace is, yes, it's an e-commerce offering, but within it is the most important part, right? So that takes us a step back into talking about operators. And so when we had the coming or the launching of OpenShift 4, what that brought us was Kubernetes operators. And while many of those in your audience might be well versed, I have learned that not all OpenShift buyers are as well versed in operators. And so even our team had to take a step back just to think about, okay, so when we start to engage with these OpenShift users, let's really talk to them about why they want to use operators. And so what we want to ensure is that they understand, especially for developers and IT admins, that operators provide that ability to rapidly and more securely automate lifecycle management of applications and supporting infrastructure. So that means that burden of managing manual tasks, such as deployment and upgrades and backups, is alleviated.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And I know, Chris, prior to this, you said you've had lots of experience in that. Because what we want, in operator, what we want is that automation, right? And you want to be able to provide those that aren't as experienced, but can be experienced, and still be able to have agility, reliability. And then it's just the simplicity of operating the day one and day two operations across hybrid cloud without being an expert. And Chris, I don't know if you found that to be true, but that truly is that benefit of using operators.
I mean, the operator pattern itself is incredibly powerful because it sits there and it's the reconciliation loop is what makes it joyful for me, an old operator person, to say, right, like, hey, here's a mundane task. Let me just put this little bit of code, be it, Go, Helm, Ansible, and bake it into an operator using the operator framework, which is a upstream or incubating CNCF project, and just have that mundane task taken care of me from that point forward once I've applied the CR, and not having to worry about it literally ever again, right? unless I upgrade, a version of something, and then I need to bump some updates into the operator itself. But absolutely, it is an incredibly powerful pattern. And folks, there's a wonderful book about it. I dropped a link in chat earlier, but if you didn't, please download it, check it out. You can get yourself started with the operator framework and you'll be off and running. Yeah, so to
add to that value,
right,
that's why we have Marketplace.
Right. So
because within Marketplace, correct, you have the offerings that are there are certified operators from our partners that really help with the majority of workloads you're going to see moved on to OpenShift.
Right. But it gives people, like, there's a trial for everything in the marketplace, is there not? Right.
Correct.
So yeah,
it's an excellent customer experience. When you go onto Marketplace, and Lars and I are going to show you a demo later, easy to navigate. And easy to discover whether you know the vendor you want to work with or you need a solution within a specific area. And when you start to take a look at all of the documentation that's provided from each of the partners, you become very well versed. And then every partner product has a 30-day trial. And so you can spin it up on one of your OpenShift clusters, which I believe, Lars, we're going to do a little demo to show you how easy that is. And then after the 30 days, it is the function of using a credit card to make a purchase. Also there are some private offers. You can work with the partner directly as well. But the accessibility of a variety of these products in one location is what makes the difference. Now, in a very simple comparison to AWS and to Azure and Google Cloud, with marketplaces, what you have, though, is the ability to use these products across any cloud, in any environment that OpenShift runs. So now you've got your portability, right? And you have your choice. You're not locked in specifically to one cloud with one application. You can now use any of these applications on OpenShift and across multiple clouds. So that's the true differentiating offer that we give to users.
It's really nice too, because you get the same experience on premises as you do in your cloud provider, and that ability to say, okay, I need to try this out in both environments at the same time, and giving folks that capability to try before they buy is always, always, always helpful, right? So we have to develop an ecosystem of partners and tooling and everything else that matters. And we've got great stuff in there right now, right? Like everything, if you need Postgres, you need identity management, we got you. But why does the ecosystem matter, Lars? Why is that so important?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. And before I actually go there, let me add one more thing to the marketplace experience. Because it's timely. Just 2 days ago, the IBM team, who was building the marketplace with us and for us, actually won a design award for the marketplace.
Oh, wow.
For basically how easy it is, a simpler way to explore everything. And that's really an awesome validation of our vision for creating like easy access to a whole inventory of things that can be used anywhere. Now, to your question on the ecosystem, Red Hat's business fundamentally is a platform business, and always have been. Red Hat has always been a platform. It started out with Linux, obviously. That was a platform that you would run on hardware to then run enterprise applications or develop them. Later, we got into the middleware business with JBoss, which again is a platform, right? So now the platform is cloud, broadly speaking. And you should absolutely think of AWS or Azure or Google as a platform. Right. And so is Red Hat OpenShift. So is Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And a platform really in itself doesn't do much for you. A platform's purpose is to light up something that you actually care about, right? The thing that creates real value. And that's how a platform adds value, because from a developer standpoint, a platform allows you to leverage technology that you didn't have to write. Simply put, right? It gives you capabilities that you don't have to worry about anymore. And same from an operations standpoint. We had the discussion about operators. A good chunk of the operator value is the automation, right? Basically one click or one command line, and suddenly a whole set of magic starts off that otherwise you would have to manually follow in a script. And that is an example for how a platform adds value, because the platform provides these interfaces that anything that interacts with the platform can use in order to do its job. Now, from a Red Hat point of view, the ecosystem is incredibly important because it defines how useful our platform is. Simply speaking, how many people can we relate to, how many people can we help with getting their job done. From a customer perspective, I think it is a little different, because there is on one hand, of course, that desire of, I want access to a very broad range of things, ideally completely unconstrained. Anything under the sun I can find, I want to use in my environment, and I want that usage to be frictionless. I want that to be secure. I want that to be stable. I want that to be somewhat predictable. And I think this is our model for building an actual ecosystem. Well, Red Hat really participates in two main ecosystems. We are on one hand in the open source community, which of course is now the default innovation model, right, or creation model for almost anything, and that in itself creates an ecosystem, right? There are people who are using technologies, people who are participating in the discussion leading to the decisions, and of course the people who write all this stuff. And similarly, we need a commercial ecosystem that builds on all that community goodness, but now adds certain attributes that are just important in a business environment or in an enterprise environment, such as who is making sure that if I use technologies from 10, 20, 30 different vendors, these things actually work together? Like, who's on the hook for that, right?
Right.
You can assume that it might work because everybody has that as a shared goal, but who's actually on the hook? And then and if something goes wrong, who do you ask to fix it, right? That's the other part in it, which is important. And then of course now it has gotten incrementally more and more and more important the more solutions get connected. And now with cloud, it's really at a completely new level, which is security. Like, how can you trust that the thing you're using is actually the thing you want to use and not something malicious that someone injected into your supply chain?
Right.
How do you know that it's actually maintained and kept up to date? And how can you trust that the vendors have the right policies? So I think that is broadly why an ecosystem matters. It delivers value by what is in the ecosystem. It creates a certain predictable experience. And from a vendor perspective, It basically allows you to create business opportunity. It chases business opportunity. A lot of the partners that Katie mentioned earlier, they are in the marketplace because they see opportunity to serve their customers better, reach new customers, reach into markets that they might not be strong in yet. Basically, all ways to grow your business. So the idea in an ecosystem is, of course, win, 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 right? Everybody wins if we connect the dots, right?
That's awesome. And sorry about that. My dog decided that she wanted to let the audience know she's feeling much better.
That's awesome.
So you mentioned frictionless, and right, like my background is in DevOps. I started working in Kubernetes pretty early on, and reducing friction is like always a challenge. What have we done to kind of pop the lid on friction and say, no, this marketplace solution will give you a more seamless kind of experience, one that you're going to enjoy more, essentially, right? Like, because friction creates anger creates hate, and hate leads to like a Yoda quote or something. So yeah, what is some of that value add that we've put into the marketplace to give people that friction reduction?
Yeah, let me take a shot at this, and Katie, happy to let you add a perspective. I would say in this is 2021, right? And so friction, what is actually friction? Let's think about this for a second. From a developer point of view, if I want to do something, I want to do it now. I want it to happen pretty much immediately, and I want it to go right the first time, right? And I think a lot of this experience is delivered very well in an as a service type experience, right? You go to something which is already basically running for you, you click a button, and now you can access it with an API, with a secret, whatever. We have embraced that as the goalpost for what we want a marketplace experience with OpenShift to be. We want software, even complex software, such as distributed data stores or machine learning solutions. These are things that have an inherent complexity to themselves. So they don't necessarily lend themselves out of the box to this sort of instantly available and ready for the job sort of pattern. What we have done, honestly, we've combined the components that we already have. We have a platform, OpenShift, that can run any containerized workload. It used to be any containerized Linux workload. Now we're even breaking beyond the Linux boundary, which we don't really need, but some people might like it.
Right.
And I say this as a 20+ year Linux guy. We've taken the operator framework that we talked earlier, which provides an awesome technology approach for turning a piece of software into an actual service experience, because the operator takes care of all the automation that is needed for that, from provisioning, configuration, but also upgrading, scaling, managing resilience, and most importantly, as applications running on a distributed system continue to run on a distributed system, because the operator allows it to respond to any event that happens on the cluster, depending on how it's written, right? But theoretically, you could take it to that level. We call this the autopilot level. And now the marketplace, what the marketplace adds is basically an experience that makes the ecosystem accessible through the journey that a human would actually take from, and we will see this in the demo later. Like, I need a database. Show me what you got. Right. I want a database with certain attributes. Can I filter that? Yes, you can. Okay, I want this one here, but I'm not ready to spend money. Let's go into the trial we talked about. I want to try it. Okay, now this thing works really well. I've written my app. It does what I want. Now I want to have the security of support and version updates going forward. I basically want the commercial version. And this is just one click away. And now you're running the commercial version, basically.
Right.
And all this in an integrated experience that we want from a Red Hat point of view. And of course, we partnered with IBM on that. We want to be as easy as a public cloud experience without requiring you to run in any given public cloud. So you can do this on a public cloud. You can do this on another public cloud. You can do it on-prem. You can do it on the edge. You can do it on your laptop. We don't really care where that runs. Wherever OpenShift runs, you get that experience. That's the simple approach.
And that, I think, is the power of OpenShift to an extent, right? Like,
Absolutely.
You have a consistent, unified control plane where your apps perform or act the same, and you have access to the same APIs across clouds to, interact with Kubernetes or interact with your applications or interact with the marketplace itself. So, there's a lot, I'm scrolling through the marketplace pages. I'm seeing a lot of brands I see, normally in the ecosystem of, cloud native and everything. So what are the partners getting out of this, Katie? That's kind of my next question is, if I'm a partner, what do I get?
Sure. And I was going to say, before I answer it, I did want to add on to what Lars had said,
Absolutely.
Which was, if you're talking about friction, and we touched upon this a bit before we started the show, friction could also mean then working with your procurement teams when it comes to billing, right? So now we are attempting, I think we did a great job of it, of eliminating that friction with procurement as well, because our private offering, which is called Red Hat Marketplace Select, now allows the IT ops team to curate a selection of applications and provide them into your own marketplace, which I believe some companies are probably doing on their own.
Right.
But I would bet that this would be a better experience. And so now you have the ability to provide access to those who are monitoring the spend. They need to see utilization of that application. And while we don't have that complete utilization just yet, that's what we're working towards. But you would be able to see how much of each product is being used when your annual contract is up. So it now gives greater control to cost management or asset management, but with that ability to remove the friction for those who want to just use the tools.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, Katie, thanks for adding this. I think this is a very important point. Chris, let me jump in here, if I may. Because I think cloud adoption has reached the state where buying and spend management is part, or should be part, of a cloud strategy.
Yeah,
of some sort.
exactly.
I think we're no longer at the pace. I remember, like, when cloud was new, it was seen from a procurement point of view as basically shadow IT. All right, here's someone doing something that we didn't endorse. They're spending money in ways that we didn't want. That's mostly gone, right? I think now what we're seeing, very intentionally crafted processes and relationships with cloud providers, with service providers, with vendors that are trying to really manage the internal enterprise requirements around governance, around cost, around security, and combine this into a commercial model. But still, there is that inherent friction for the team, because they can do this in one environment one way, and they can do it in another environment. But the more environments you have, the more complex it gets, of course, and every one of them has their own little way of doing things. So there's the inherent friction of complexity, which is another way to do it. I think we aspire definitely to address that. Many enterprises, they are large organizations, right? I mean, they have tens of thousands of individuals that are actually participating in the, let's say, technology-related activities, broadly speaking. It's not just all development and operations. And so just being able to create the agility for all these teams to be able to access the technologies they need to get their job done at the time when they need it, without having to ask for permission, fill out a bunch of forms, wait for an answer. And I mean, all these things can basically be automated in the marketplace. And we believe this is going to be a strategic value to our customers, because they can implement a set of internal processes and policies that aim at, I want to be intentionally flexible with where I build my applications, what I'm using for them. So it's that ecosystem dimension we talked about earlier. And at the same time, be able to delegate control within the organization, because that delegation creates autonomy. Autonomy creates agility, and agility creates value, right? That's in the end of the day, that's, I think, how many organizations think about that. So we cater to this. It's still early, I think, with containerized software. We're not necessarily at that stage yet where this is the major needle mover. I think right now it's more about facilitating adoption, facilitating initial impact, but it will hopefully quickly grow into that dimension.
And we do have one, we have multiple customers that are now using Select, but we have one that is public. So Anthem is one of our OpenShift customers, and purchase Select for just that purpose, or is planning to do it for that purpose of having, a digital-centric approach, and that they can provide more of a private, as they called it, provide private developer-centric location where then the developers are just allowed to innovate products and services. So
Right.
They saw a value in it, and others within various different industries are also going, yeah, right, I get it. I understand what I can use this for.
Well, I mean, now I remember contracting at like big banks and stuff, and they would have like, oh, if you want a MySQL database, this is the Ansible playbook to pull down and use. There's a whole role to install it and get it set up how you want it. Now it's just go to the marketplace or the select marketplace and pick the default tool that we use that is fully supported.
That's right.
And you have the reduction in friction between you and your finance team, because now you're talking the same language essentially. And it's a single bill, right? Like, it's not like we try to do, like, if you have 14 partners in the marketplace, there's 14 different bills. We try to consolidate all that, don't we?
Correct. Yep. That is the additional benefit of having that. Absolutely.
I mean, when you tell your finance teams that, hey, I'm going to have one place to get all my software from, they really like that. You know?
Yeah. I think it's important. It is inclusive of different models of how commercial things are offered, right? You can do proprietary licenses, check. You can do like metered offerings, like on-demand services typically, but also software increasingly can be offered now this way because we're using the built-in metering capabilities of OpenShift. So software vendors can offer their own products in a as pay-as-you-go motion in any environment, which is a little scary from a vendor perspective because the predictability of revenue gets a little lost in that system, but is super convenient to customers, right? So
right.
We're looking for this to become very important. And we're also basically offering now basically the ability to buy certain software as a service offerings from vendors that are popular with developer teams. So they get to this everything you need or everything you might need, you can pursue and purchase in one model, and then have that delegation into the org and the frictionless adoption. So we believe that's a lot of value.
That's a ton of value, in my opinion, right? Like, I wish this was around 10 years ago, right? Like,
that's right.
I mean, this is going to save people so much time and so much heartache and just toil, right? Like, that's where, you know, Red Hat, I think, is very good about breaking down toil into manageable pieces.
So I didn't answer your question, but back to
the partner
value. No, that's okay. So the partner value. So we've been working many years with a lot of these partners that are featured on Marketplace. So this isn't new for us, and they've had their applications featured in our ecosystem catalog, which we still have, and that has our certified hardware, software, and also our cloud services. And but it's not e-commerce, right? Quite simply, It's not e-commerce. So when IBM came into the fold, I guess is the way to put it, or you can say when they purchased Red Hat, we then got the opportunity to work with them to build an e-commerce offering. And so what does that offer now? Well, our partners have a digital route to market that we couldn't provide them in the past. And so it's excellent. I mean, our partners are very dedicated, and they've built these operators for their applications, and we want to give them the ability to have that awareness, the ability for consumer discovery, customer discovery, right? So that they, in the first step of the process, a customer can go into one place and to be able to look at a variety of offerings. They get the chance to work with new IBM clients. Quite honestly, I mean, they do have that opportunity now for IBM clients that are becoming more focused on hybrid cloud, and they're part of that mix. So there's quite a few offerings. We also do have co-sell incentives. We have co-marketing programs, but the bigger opportunity of having that e-commerce and the ability to have larger awareness and probably greater spend within a customer base that they wouldn't have been able to have before is really important and working well for them.
Yeah, let me add one dimension to this, Katie. I think you did an excellent job in describing the business opportunity dynamics around this. And as I said earlier, this is a huge part of why someone might participate in such a digital environment and in an ecosystem. There is another point of view in this that I just want to be transparent about, because we are talking openly about this with our partners. If any software business, and of course, increasingly now, software businesses are not just driven by traditional software vendors, right? We see more and more actual enterprises who used to be more from a vendor point of view, a customer, they would buy our stuff.
Right.
They are now getting themselves into software offerings because they develop intellectual property, and then someone asks the question, can we monetize that? And often the answer is yes, of course. And this is how many innovative industry solutions are created. So basically, but any software vendor fundamentally has to ask themselves three questions for their business in a cloud point of view. There's the question of, on how many clouds do I need to be to reach all my customers?
Right.
So that's the addressable market question. And there is a severe cost to this. You typically, any software vendor for the entire history of the software industry has always made a decision of, I want as many platforms as I possibly can support, but there is the constraint of how many can I actually support, right? And cloud works the same way. It is actually expensive to being able to have your offering on AWS, on Azure, on Google, and on a bunch of regional clouds. It gets prohibitive very, very quickly. So there's that dimension, addressable market. Then there's the second dimension, which is strategically, what do you want to run your business? Well, I think we have seen as these public clouds, we call them hyperscalers because they are hyper. As they get into more and more technologies, more and more industry solutions, they actually start to compete with their vendors and partners on that environment. And if you want to get an example, talk to anyone in the retail business, how inclined they are to run their business on AWS, who they probably see Amazon, the retail operation, as one of their chief competitors, right? So there are these also strategic considerations. We have seen that AWS, in their desire to serve customers and offer innovation, they are offering services of popular open source technologies that happen to have vendors that drive these technologies who are now suddenly find themselves in a compete relationship with the platform in which they run. That's not a great position to be in.
It's almost overnight in some cases too, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah.
So if something like that happens, you want to have a plan B, right? You want to have options. And I think if you have built-in hybrid cloud choice into your strategy, then that gives you options, whatever they are. And I think the third dimension is also the innovation component. I mean, any software business, the life cycles, if you look at product life cycles, I'm a bit of an economist when it comes to this. Product life cycles have shortened dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
They're maybe now measured only in years, in some cases even less than that, until they get replaced by something better. That's just the rate of innovation. So if you look at it from that point of view, your ability to innovate and deliver differentiation depends on your own creativity and your resourcing and your funding, but also on your ability to leverage innovation that's happening out there. And if Google tomorrow comes out with some super awesome machine learning capabilities that you want to use, and now your entire app is written against, let's say, Azure, not here to bash AWS all the time, then you will have a hard time tapping into this because there are integrations, right? If you are already on Google and you're already familiar, your engineering team is familiar, you know how to deliver service and quality there, it is much easier to tap into this. So there's also that strategic element to hybrid cloud. And I really see a lot of vendors who didn't have to worry about most of this. They're really getting pressure now from their customers, as we said earlier, who now make the intentional choices. I don't care where you run your software, but I care where my data lives. I want my data to be in Azure because I trust these guys and I have some extra arrangements with them. Now, if your thing doesn't run on Azure, you have a problem, right? So I think there's a lot of these dimensions where from a vendor point of view, just getting to hybrid cloud is a huge value. And then on top of that, you add that digital road to market that Katie talked about, that actually makes it real, right? And I think that's the promise that we deliver. That said, it's still fairly early. If you look at the inventory in the marketplace, which we're going to do in a minute, I guess, is very focused on the application development set of use cases right now. We are working with many of our partners that are actually more driving business solutions to also become available in that same motion. So it's not just targeting developers, it's also for just enabling the enterprise at large to run platforms and solutions to just help them to run their business better and develop innovative applications.
Awesome. Is there anything else we want to mention before we dive into the demo?
No,
yes, I do have one quick point, which is the marketplace right now is only available to North American customers. So just want
Okay.
to keep that in mind for those who are listening.
For now, yeah.
For now, we have geo expansion in our plans, and hopefully we'll be able to announce more soon, but just wanted to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
But then we can go off to the
Awesome.
demo.
Yes. Let's try it out. Let's see what this marketplace thing's all about.
And now, Chris, I can start with sharing my screen, correct?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. So for everyone, I am going to just show more of the navigation and what you're able to see and find and discover. And when we start to move into actual seeing the use of a trial on a cluster, then Lars is going to take it from there. So I am going to now share my screen.
The screen sharing dance. There we go.
And here we are. And I'm guessing at this point, we are all good.
Mm-hmm. I see the marketplace. Yes.
Okay, great. The only thing I cannot do is move this lovely little function here.
Oh.
It's because I'm not a Zoom user.
I'm sorry.
But that's okay.
Unless you're in the browser, it should be movable. I don't know.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll leave it there for now, not to disrupt anything. So when you start to take a look here, as Lars mentioned, we did recently receive a design award, both those that are working on the IBM side, the design team, and also those team members on Red Hat as well. Very simple aesthetic here and user interface. I think one of the best features is the beginning, right at the top here. Anything you want to find is right there. I mean, it's very simple. It's almost a Google-like, right? Google-esque. So if there's, for instance, if you're looking for Dynatrace, and you type in, and immediately you now have your tiles featured of what's available from Dynatrace. And that's just a simple example of looking for one specific vendor. We can opt out of that, and now we can return back to our storefront. And there are many different short videos / documents that talk about how to use Marketplace. You can see those featured here. What's new within Marketplace is also updated.
I love the fact that it has a blog associated with it. Sorry to interrupt, but yes.
It does. Yes, it does. And primarily because we have a lot of updates within the site. And that's the best way for us to get the information out. So yes, we do have a blog as well. You can see that when I mentioned we have the 12 categories featured here. So very simple again, if you're looking for a use case, you can quickly click on a use case here, and then you can then access the information that you need. So if I go over to, say, database, now you're going to see the list of those available within. We have 17 products featured here, and I'll get a little bit into more all of the various different information featured within each one. But I'm just taking a quick look. You can also, in a nice user experience here, be able to also break it down into various things you're seeking. And so you can look for various trials, how you're going to purchase, ratings. We do have user ratings that are also noted here. And then it goes back to, so you can filter by vendor as well. So very easy to use. So now I'll go back, and I am loving how much my phone wants to pick up my conversation. And the other thing that we feature, if I go back to the storefront that I wanted to show, was we have data sets. We got about 120 different data sets as well. So This is new. This came out, oh goodness, I think maybe September, Lars. Did we talk about data sets in September?
No, I think they came around the new year.
The new year, yeah, right, correct. We went fully GA.
We live in the future.
September. Yes, it's just been one of those years, right? That just keeps on going. But we did announce data sets. You're right, around the beginning of this year. Another great feature for those for developers who are looking to find something very easy to look at. Easy to use. And so there's a wide variety of data sets, and I believe in the next half of the year, I'm going to add more. I think those are going to be more of a paid service, but right now our data sets are free. And then, as you can see, we start to now we dive deeper into each one of the use cases. So let me just take a look here. I'll just grab one. Let me go with Couchbase. So you take a look here into Couchbase. And as I mentioned, very rich documentation within this section. This is what we're really most proud of, and easy to navigate. Straight away, you'll see up on the top, you've got the ability to do your purchase or your trial. You've got access to all of your reviews, take a look and be able to actually see user information. Complete overview of what it runs on. On the left, we have all of the certification standards that are met. What level of operator does this also deploy? And then you start to go into more of the pitch about the partner product and offering, and then you have your pricing. So it tells you how many cores, what you're going to need, what kind of subscription it is, and then you can click to view all of our pricing options. So if I click on that, give you even more. So now you're going to see, okay, you have your free trial that you can access for the 30 days. And then you have your two different offerings based on what it is that you're looking, depending on the amount of cores that you need. And so that, it also gives all of the terms for the license agreements. And if you need any questions that you want to ask as well, we have an FAQ section, but you can also at any point ask a question within our support section. So very simple. I'm going to stop right there, Chris, though, because
Sure.
as a user, maybe you might have some questions that I haven't quite answered yet, or features that I haven't shown.
So, I mean, you've covered more than I could possibly imagine, but I am curious, right? Like, where do the ratings come from? I know they come from users, but like, are they like in their console on their cluster and say, oh, this is awesome? Or are they doing it in the marketplace? Where is that happening exactly?
Yes, that's a really good question. So I am going to respond in what I believe, although I might say, Lars, if I'm wrong, let me know. But I do believe you can provide a review here, but I do think it happens in the OpenShift console within OpenShift. Is that correct, Lars?
So it's actually it's an aggregator service that we're tapping into that speaks to the technology and the product more broadly, and because we didn't necessarily just want to limit I want to follow the lead of other people to the still relatively small community of OpenShift users out there, right? A lot of these technologies, they have very broad reach, and so we didn't want to exclude that from that point of view. OpenShift's a great place to run these things, hopefully the best place to run this thing, but many of these technologies are used in kind of cloud native environments and even beyond that broadly. So they mostly come from a kind of a, as I said, an aggregator that looks at lots of different places where review is happening. We're looking to build that out within the experience, as I said, Katie, within OpenShift itself. Right now, we don't really have that in there yet. And I think this is part of that functionality that we talked about earlier about how do you enable an organization. Today, we focus on more of a policy-based view of what is approved to use, how can you delegate budgets and approvals within the organization. I think when many large organizations, there is value in, oh, someone was successful with something, give them a way to express that so other teams can follow that lead, right? And reuse that sort of knowledge. I think this is clearly something we want to enable, but that's a little in the future. It's one of the areas of improvement we want to build in the future.
Awesome.
And then from there, I mean, with support, again, all of our operators that are available here in Marketplace are certified on Red Hats and on OpenShift. So that means you have Red Hat support, you have the vendor support, and then you're also going to have IBM support here as well. So you're fully covered, and there is a full team that supports the Marketplace out of IBM. So no question about if you have any challenges. I'll quickly click on that, but you have full documentation as well, and then it is case management.
Nice.
Now, in terms of if you want to create an account, there are multiple ways in which, if you already have a Red Hat account, you can log in with your Red Hat user account, which is fantastic. And so, for instance, I have a Red Hat account, and so I can simply log in. I'm recognized. And now the information So one account for everything. I simply add in my password. And now I'm into and accessing everything within Marketplace with a Red Hat account, which is fantastic. If you have an IBM account, you can do exactly the same thing. And if you don't have either, then you can sign up for a Red Hat Marketplace ID. So there are 3 ways to enter this portal. But for most practical, I would say, would be to log in with your Red Hat account. So all customers would use their existing ID to enter into the portal. And now you've got access to a variety of different offerings. And this, like for instance, I've downloaded and done a few trials myself, but you can start to see what you have available, although it might have been some time. So at this point is where I'll transfer it over to Lars, because he does have an existing cluster and has a trial that he can walk through. Unless there are any other questions that you have, Chris, on this.
No, I don't have any more questions. Go ahead, Lars.
All right.
About 13 minutes left on the hour here.
All right. Now we will be in the hands of OpenShift to stay on time with that. Let's see how that works. Does that come through? You should
It
see
sure does.
a beautiful,
there you go,
freshly provisioned OpenShift cluster that we put together for this. So I just wanted to show a little bit. What Katie showed was the experience on marketplace.redhat.com. That's what we call the public marketplace. As she said, Marketplace Select is basically a customizable version for an enterprise with their own logo in there with additional controls. In any case, the architecture is the marketplace manages an inventory, manages your purchases, your users, and it speaks to OpenShift clusters. So an OpenShift cluster can be hooked up to the marketplace, and by doing so, you now can access the marketplace from OpenShift itself. So I wanted to start with showing that. So if we go here into the operators, I can go into the operator hub, which shows basically all the software that's available for instant deployment within this cluster. And you see the little tags here. It says community, marketplace. The ones without a tag are officially certified from these vendors. So I could go down here and sub-select, okay, let's look at only what comes from the marketplace. And let's say I want to use a database. Katie used the database example. And let's say I'm really excited about operators. So I want a database with these autopilot capabilities.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
I don't have to worry about the distributed system aspects of these things. That gets me to 3 Couchbase. Katie showed Couchbase. So let me go into Crunchy. So I can basically click in here. I get a very similar UI to what I did, what Katie showed. And I can actually go out to the marketplace. This leads me out to the marketplace side, or I can install it from this cluster right away, right? So that's the experience within OpenShift. Now, similarly, I can actually go and in the marketplace, this is now my account, which I don't know if the same or different than Katie's, it could be. So in the marketplace, you have this workspace section where you can basically look at what is my software. So I went in there like yesterday or 2 days ago and just hit the trial button for Crunchy. So you see I have one product here, it says Crunchy, trial Crunchy Postgres, trial expires 28 days. I can click on this thing, and now what can I do with this trial, right? That's the question.
Are there any limiting features or anything, right?
Exactly. So, and now I'm basically getting into a side of what did I use that trial? And you see here, it is actually deployed on a cluster. So I basically took this from the marketplace UI. I pressed this button here, install operator. Wow. So if you click that button, you now can choose.
Well, that looks familiar.
Different channels or approval strategies, and then you can choose one of the clusters that you have registered. So I have this cluster that I just showed you, and now I can just pick a namespace into which I want to put it. Of course, now this one is already running it, right? So it would have to be a different namespace. Then you click install, and then the operator magic takes off. And however long that takes depends on the software, how complex that is. You have your thing running, right? So that's basically that experience. Similarly, I could go for the existing ones. I basically see all my software inventory for each of these products. This takes a while. So let me actually go back into OpenShift while this is loading. And if I go into the operator hub here, I can see the installed operators. You see there are a couple. There's the marketplace operator itself, which creates that connection so that these two things can talk to each other very, very securely. And here's my trial, Crunchy PostgreSQL in the my test namespace. So I can now go into this thing and, for example, whatever, deploy an actual instance of a cluster of Postgres servers for my application, right?
Right.
And that way it could then also be made available to developers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it very much delivers that frictionless experience that we talked about. And all I have to do for this is I basically have to take an OpenShift cluster and connect it to the marketplace, which is actually a fairly simple step.
Yeah, that
You
should
need
be
to
pretty
have
straightforward.
You need permissions on the cluster because, of course, that thing is kind of running as a system level service on the cluster. But basically, it's about a pull. Don't look at the secret. Oh, it's just the name of the secret. Good. And then a few commands. We're going to make this experience a little more slick. Right now, it's still like following just a few OC commands, basically on the command line, or you're logged into this cluster. But it is a really, like, it took me like 3 minutes, honestly, to get this going, and then I could go in and actually deploy software on that. So I think that's actually pretty cool. And now, as a result, I had my clusters here. It says AWS, right? You would of course have, as we just said earlier, any cloud, any environment. It would just annotate this properly. I can go straight into the console of that cluster from here,
Nice.
And of course I can detach that. So that's in a nutshell the experience. So really, from the marketplace, you have a view of what are your clusters, what's going on them, which is simple, and that's by design. We want that to be simple. Red Hat offers very comprehensive management tools if you really want to manage everything that's going on in the cluster, like Advanced Cluster Manager. And you can also basically see it on the cluster, which is important to an end user because that makes it very accessible. But it's also important to a vendor, as we talked earlier, because now they are actually exposed out with the end users. They're in the real estate of the product, which is a big point for them. That they're out in the face of the user. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to show. I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
No, I mean that was a very comprehensive review. I mean, what does the simpler process look like, right? Because I'm pasting in 5 commands seems pretty easy to me.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think we could of course, and we got this question occasionally. Could a cluster pre-install that marketplace integration?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So you could potentially, but then I think we made OpenShift more modular with version 4 than it was before, and that was intentional because customers want to control as to what's running there. And then, of course, you still have the secret account level exchange. We couldn't automate this away. So, but I mean, we are always open to hearing how we can make this experience better and how we can make it more exciting. For sure.
Awesome.
All right, stop sharing.
Wonderful. So you're going to increase productivity. You're going to, create, simpler hybrid cloud environments, like creating a database distributed across my entire fleet is a couple clicks away, right? And I can just start adding members as my clusters get spun up. Like this seems almost too good to be true, right? Like, what was the motivation from either the IBM side or the Red Hat side to like build this thing, right?
Yeah, I know it's a great question because I would say from a let me start off with the Red Hat side because obviously I've been working with Red Hat for so many years, I think 18 plus now. Red Hat has always been about choice and about openness and about somewhat being Switzerland as a neutral to others, right?
Right.
So from an ecosystem point of view, that really means like we will partner with anybody out there that our customers wants us to work with. And we're simply speaking there. So that's where that openness thing came from. Now, obviously, hybrid cloud is now really real. I think hybrid cloud is a lot more real with containerized applications because containerization gives us the primitives that enable consistency, portability, and that level of let's say, opinionation that allows us to automate things, right? So it really allows us to deliver a cloud service in these different environments. So that was the second ingredient. So openness plus containerization. And then there's really that commerce dimension that Katie talked about, which is actually a business in itself. Like selling someone else's products, that's a business. And you need to be able to do this. And this is not, in full transparency, this is not a business Red Hat has ever been in. So we just don't do that. We have never done that. We don't sell other companies' stuff. internally, sometimes we're thinking that our own sales channels are not selling enough of our own product, not to mention other companies' products. So
Right.
we were actually I was looking for how can we serve that need while Red Hat continues to not be in that business. IBM in parallel, as they were working on okay, we're going to acquire Red Hat, but then run it as a separate entity, basically. They had invested into a marketplace that was reusing many of the things that they had built for IBM Cloud. So that's where that comes from. IBM is in that business of selling other companies' products. And for example, they've sold a lot of Red Hat over the many years in that capacity. IBM also was already in that digital business, and they were in the cloud business with IBM Cloud. So they funded a new initiative around building a marketplace that is designed for hybrid cloud. And then as we got into the picture, we discussed, okay, how do we partner on this maybe? And what came out of it is what we showed you here today, which is about a hybrid cloud marketplace that is very much focused on OpenShift and uses OpenShift as a deployment platform in order to truly deliver that cloud-like experience. That makes the marketplace very, very valuable. And so that's really the inception of that. And of course, there's a good overlap and correlation between customers of Red Hat and customers of IBM. So I think also from a go-to-market motion of how we actually communicate, position, deliver value, we can collaborate very effectively with this and basically stay true to our identity at Red Hat, continue to be neutral, but also basically tend a little bit into the trust that enterprises award to IBM for handling their money, because that's basically what they do here in this case, if they buy things in this digital way.
Awesome. So we only have less than 2 minutes left. So do you want to talk about the future at all, or are we at a good wrapping point? You tell me.
Oh yeah, I mean, honestly, with only 2 minutes, I cannot obviously talk very deeply, but I can share a couple areas of focus that we have. Of course, one area of focus is continue to build out the inventory of the marketplace. Much like I said earlier, right? A platform is only as useful as what you can do with it. For the marketplace, that means things in there. So if you have specific suggestions, specific needs, if anyone wants something in there, let us know, and we will go and work with that vendor. So that's part one. We're continuously doing that. As I said earlier, we are expanding the inventory. Katie touched on data models. I mentioned some of the more software as a service premises that wouldn't necessarily run on the cluster, but are still adding value to the overall experience and to what the customer tries to do with the cluster. So that's another area where we're looking to expand. From a functionality point of view, I think it is all about on-demand models, spend aggregation across clouds. So we're doubling down on some of these business model capabilities, especially for cloud services. Next week is Red Hat Summit, where we will make some announcements in that area. And the marketplace is always part of the total solution at a minimum, like as the billing engine of how you get your aggregated bill. In some cases, also as part of the overall experience as to how you would access a cloud service that is delivered by Red Hat or by any of Red Hat's partners. So that's another whole area that we are opening up as of next week. In that area, so a lot more to come next week. Check in with us, and we can of course come back here in a couple of months and talk about that more if there's interest.
Especially when we've expanded into more geos as well.
Right.
Oh, right. Exactly. Yes. Geo expansion, very important. Yes. It is somewhat limiting to only be in the US, especially as a European. I can say that with a lot of passion. But we will get there. We will get there. We have a plan, and we will be soon in hopefully lots more different countries.
Awesome. Well, we need to clear the channel for our friends over at DevNation. So thank you very much, Katie. Thank you very much, Lars, for coming on. Thank you, audience, for watching. And we'll see you next time on In the Clouds.
Thanks for having us, Chris. Thanks, everyone.